What do you do if you're ripped off and don't know where to turn?
I did outline all the faults in the vehicle. He rejected all those.
Court of law backs you, but you still don't get your money.
Little did I know how long it would take to try and recover the money from him. Sorry.
It's time to call the sheriffs.
We have every right to enter the premises by force if necessary. We will be entering that building.
Sheriffs are High Court enforcement officers who recover what a court judgment says is owed.
The writ orders us to come here and seize goods to the value of this debt.
They're the experts in getting cash that's rightfully yours.
£1,323.
But fighting for the underdog isn't a job for the faint-hearted.
Come on, self-lawrence.
I will back that truck straight through your windscreen.
Debtors aren't pleased to see them.
They're harassing people.
Because they hate paying up.
Are you happy for me to just leave you some paperwork?
No, I'm not. Go away.
In today's programme, Robert Baker was made redundant after he tried to return to work following a kidney transplant. He won an employment tribunal, but his ex-boss hasn't paid a penny. Can the sheriffs put that right?
The total outstanding, £8,621.20.
And they might be worth £31.4 billion in revenue, but no company is too big for the sheriffs to take on behalf of an unhappy customer.
It's High Court enforcement. We've been issued a writ for Barclays Wealth.
And office manager Joan Wales won her compensation claim for unfair dismissal, but never got her cash. The sheriffs go to the home of her former boss.
If you want to call the police, Mr. Lidford, call the police.
They want to take his car to pay the debt, but he's got different ideas.
You'll be obstructing court officers from doing their job, which you can get arrested for.
Right, Mr. Lidford.
Try it. Go for your life.
Robert Baker lives in Witham, Essex. Robert used to work for a central heating company as a domestic heating and plumbing engineer. But one day he had an accident at work, and it changed his life forever.
I was taking out an old cast iron bath, and a bit of the metal had got stuck in my foot, and I ended up having to go to hospital, and my foot had become infected.
Robert had blood tests, and the next thing he knew, a kidney specialist came to see him.
He told me that my kidneys are only functioning at 10%. So I had to go back and see him a few weeks later, and they confirmed that I was going to need a kidney transplant, which all came as a bit of a shock.
The consultant told Robert his kidney problems were related to the diabetes he'd had since childhood. The blood tests following his accident at work had revealed a life-threatening underlying problem.
Quite sort of bewildered by it all, to be honest, and sort of frightened, I suppose. And I thought, what next?
Despite the shock of his diagnosis, Robert wanted to continue life as normally as possible. He returned to work while he waited for his transplant. Robert tried hard to minimise the impact of his health issues on his employer.
I just got on with my work, and I had to have sort of various tests and all that done over the next 12 months. The hospital appointments I took out of my holiday entitlement. So it wasn't, like I'd been off quite, put him in an awkward situation, but I kept having time off. Spent about a year having all the tests done, and then got put live on the waiting list in the October of 2008. And within 2 weeks I'd had the transplant done.
Robert was in hospital for 4 weeks after the transplant, and then spent 5 months recovering at home before feeling strong enough to go back to work. He called his boss to let him know he was ready to return.
He said, I'll have to see what I've got for you. And I thought, well, what do you mean what you've got for me? That's my job. And then the next thing I know, I got a letter in the post saying, your job's at risk and you'll be invited into the office for a meeting to discuss redundancies.
Robert was the only employee made redundant. He went to an employment tribunal which found the correct procedures hadn't been followed and awarded him £10,000 compensation, but the company only paid £3,000. Robert went to a solicitor and now has a High Court writ for the money, but he still hasn't been paid.
I've done as much as I can to get the money back in a legal way, as it were. There's only so much you can do. We've gone about it in the right way, going through the solicitor. I mean, at the end of the day, there's only so many things a solicitor can do. It's almost 2 years now since the judgment, and it's just gone on for too long.
Robert had one last option. He called in the sheriffs. This High Court Enforcement Office dispatched 2 officers to execute Robert's writ. It's 7:30 a.m. Sheriffs Lawrence Grix and Kev McNally are going to Chelmsford to see Robert's former boss.
When we get there, I would hope, in an ideal world, they'll just put their hands up and say, yeah, we owe the money and pay it. But we are there at the end of the day to remove goods. That's what we're ordered to do by the writ. We're not actually there to collect money. We're there to seize the defendant's goods to clear the debt, and the only way they can prevent that from happening is to pay us in full.
Lawrence and Kev have arrived, but the office looks closed.
No, not here yet. Oh, that's it.
Sheriffs don't give advance warning of visits. The surprise element makes it easier to track down debtors.
Give them a call or not alert them?
No, I'm not going to alert them yet.
The van in the car park could be removed to help pay off the debt, if it belongs to the business.
We blocked it in. If it's clear on finance, then chances are we'll be able to take it if we need to. So it's just a bargaining tool.
Wait for them to turn up then.
Yeah, so we might as well sit back in the van and keep warm. Finish off the coffee.
While Lawrence finishes his early morning coffee, Kev checks out the company's website. Time for a little wind-up.
10:30 it opens.
No.
No, I'm joking.
At 10 to 9, a car appears.
This is it.
Lawrence manoeuvred the van to get an early sight of any arrivals.
A4S line.
The driver goes into the office, and the sheriffs pounce.
Game on. Hello. Hello there, sorry to be nabbing you the second you walk in the door, but we've been waiting a while. The High Court Enforcement Officers. Right. We're here today to enforce a writ of execution against PD Lawrence and Son Limited. It's an employment tribunal case, and a former employee, Robert Baker. The total outstanding £8,621.20, right. And we need to collect that today in cleared funds, or we're here to remove goods.
Right, okay, I'll better ring Andrew.
Yeah, sure. Okay, no problem.
Yeah, I've got the High Court officers here, just here as I've just come in the door, about the money that we owe Rob. Do you know what's happening with that? Well, I can't, can I? So I don't know if she'll answer. Shall I just write a cheque?
We don't take cheques, unfortunately.
Oh, they don't take cheques now?
Needs to be cleared funds. It can be bank transfer. We can do. We've got a chip and pin machine, so we can do a card payment.
It's 8,000 something.
£8,621.20.
8,600.
The company owner has a debit card, but he's over an hour away. The sheriffs can wait, but will charge for the privilege. It's in the owner's best interest to settle this as quickly as possible.
So do you have to stand here and wait?
We have to remain on the premises, although, I mean, technically we can force an entry anyway, because it's a commercial premises. But we need to wait on the premises. I mean, if there's, if you don't want us here, if there's somewhere else we can sit out of the way or stand out of the way, we're quite happy to do that. We don't, we're not here to to get in the way of your customers and stop you running your business, by any means. So we're quite happy to.
Lawrence is quite happy where he is, with his new best friend. 5 minutes later, the receptionist, who's also one of the company directors, returns. She's transferred funds into an account with a debit card. Robert may be about to get his money at last.
Right, okay, just give it a sec, it's just configuring itself for some reason.
But the chip and pin machine isn't playing ball, so Lawrence sees if he can get better reception in the open air.
And I'll just put your card in there.
At last, the machine comes to life. Robert's money is paid in full. All that's left is some final paperwork.
Okay, I'll leave you a notice of seizure. I've just written down your shredder and your printer. Should anything go wrong with the payment and it, for whatever reason it not getting their account, it's not likely to happen because it's a chip and pin payment, but that's basically, I've just seized those goods in case, and there's a copy of the writ for you. Okay.
The sheriffs retrieve, on average, £2 million a month from debtors. They can now add £8,621.20 to that total.
Happy days. Job done.
We asked PD Lawrence and Sons to comment. They told us Mr. Baker was not dismissed due to ill health, but because of the economic climate at the time. The judge found that there was a valid case for redundancy in the company, but the correct procedures had not been followed. Back at home in Whittam, Robert is pleased he enlisted the sheriffs.
It was never about the money. I didn't do it for the money. It was the principle. Just purely, I wanted, you know, I want to be able to turn and say that, you know, what you done was wrong. And I was awarded that money in a court. Why should I be allowed to get away with it?
Executing High Court writs is a job that dates back to Saxon times.
We're looking for just under £5,500. I'm here today to execute a High Court writ. Your vehicles are going to be seized and, if necessary, removed to cover the debt.
High Court enforcement officers have more powers than bailiffs to enter properties, to seize goods for auction, to settle debts.
We're here today to remove, and that's it.
You put that camp on?
Yeah. Why? Because we're going to take it away unless we can get some money.
You've put down a name on the lease that doesn't exist. Come on, let's get this stuff out of here.
Britain's High Court enforcement industry executes over 70,000 writs every year.
We have a live writ, and we are here today to seize goods to clear this debt.
Sheriffs return tens of millions of pounds to people owed money.
Oh, that's brilliant. That looks like I've got my money back.
When the cheque arrived, I thought that was wonderful because it made me feel there was hope.
The office employs 40 full-time High Court enforcement officers, and one man looking for their help is Dave Simpson. He runs a security firm in Bromley and feels mistreated after investing in a share scheme that ended up losing him money. He wants it back. The problem is, the people he wants it back from aren't any old company. They're Barclays Bank. Dave's problem started after Barclays' wealth department convinced him to invest £50,000 in a 5-year share scheme whose value would go up or down in line with the FTSE 100 share index.
There are risks with that. I understood the risk and I was quite happy to go along with that and invest the money for 5 years on the basis of what was going on with the stock market at the time.
2 years into the 5-year scheme, Barclays offered the chance for investors to leave it early, an opportunity that suited Dave.
I decided that when I had the opportunity to get the £52,000 back, it would be very useful because I've got 4 children and they've all got various needs, education and housing, and I was going to try to help them out with that.
Dave rang Barclays, who confirmed that if he cashed in his shares with them there and then, he'd make £2,700 profit on his £50,000 investment. He decided to go ahead.
So I wrote them a letter that specifically said, on the basis of what I was told on that day, that I would like to get my money back, and also I said, I put my email address, my mobile phone number down there, and said specifically this is what I expected to get back, which I was quoted. If there was any problem with that, because I realised things could change, let me know.
Some weeks later, Dave received a cheque from Barclays. they'd cashed in his shares for £47,994, considerably less than the telephone quote for over £52,000 that had prompted him to sell them. Dave feels his letter was clear that if the value of the shares had dropped, Barclays should have checked with him before selling them.
I was pretty livid with it, pretty upset what they'd said and the way they were sort of being dismissive. So I wrote a letter back to them and saying, look, I'm not happy with this. I want you to escalate this complaint to somebody higher.
Barclays refused to refund Dave any money. In response, he decided to go to the small claims court. Dave's claim was uncontested and the court awarded in his favour. So now he's been able to turn to the sheriffs.
They will send officers along to the bank to hopefully claim my money and to get the cheque sent to me without further ado. What I'm hoping to achieve is to put myself in the position I would have been in previous to this whole thing going wrong. That's all I'm looking for, and obviously any compensation for the interest and also the court fees. My understanding is that when it gets to this level and you've got enforcement officers going in, that's a pretty serious thing. If it was me owing the bank, they would have probably done the same actions as I'd done.
Dave called the High Court Enforcement Office and they swung into action. This time, Sheriff Kev is joined by Mark Newton.
We're just heading down to Docklands in London. We got a writ for Barclays Wealth. Amount that's outstanding on this is £6,500.
A High Court writ costs £60. If the sheriffs are successful, there's nothing more to pay. If not, there's an admin fee, also of £60. Barclays has revenues of £31.4 billion a year. Dave Simpson, considerably less. But as long as there's a High Court writ, the sheriffs will do all they can to help Dave take on Goliath.
We can walk in, if that's the address we've got, that's the address we go to. It doesn't matter what they do or who they are. I think they've definitely got the money at the moment.
They'll get their legal team on.
But I think the likelihood is they'll either just accept it and pay it, or they'll get their legal team to talk to us. But we'll see. We'll see what happens when we get there. Hopefully we can get to speak to the relevant person. Our first problem is going to be trying to find somewhere to park.
But before they can tackle the parking issue, Sheriffs Mark and Kev have got to get past Canary Wharf security.
Oh yeah. From the High Court, we got a writ for Barclays Wealth at 1 Churchill Place.
The sheriffs aren't the only special guests that security need to deal with today. The guard tells them Seb Coe's coming with his Olympics committee. Canary Wharf security successfully negotiated, Mark and Kev head to Barclays' head office.
Churchill Place.
He said come back on yourself, didn't he?
Yeah, and he said park outside their thing, didn't he?
Yeah, but not where Lord Coe's going to go.
Yeah, but I don't know where Lord Coe's going to go. It don't say Lord Coe's parking space.
I don't know, but that looks like one of his...
That looks like the security, doesn't it?
Coe or no Coe, they park up in front of head office and head in.
It's all going to go off now, isn't it? Minute. Said a minute, didn't I?
Oh, yeah. Go speak to...
Barclays' front door is as far as the security will let our camera go. But Mark and Kev are allowed in to enforce Dave's High Court writ.
We better go to Barclays Wealth, can't we? We're from the High Court Enforcement. We've been issued a writ for Barclays Wealth.
The sheriffs have delivered the writ paperwork. Now all they can do is wait. Half an hour later, Mark and Kev have finished their business at the bank. Unsurprisingly, Barclays haven't handed over any cash just yet.
They weren't going to pay today, unfortunately. Because we had the writ in the name of Barclays Wealth, they're saying that's a non-entity. It's just a name that they use for a little department. The guy said he's going to take it away, look at the paperwork, and then if they have to pay it and it's owed and the judgment has gone against them, they'll pay it.
It seems Dave sued under the wrong company name. To get his money back, he'll have to bring another court action or get this one amended. It's all part of the lengthy process Dave will have to go through in his battle with Barclays. But thanks to the sheriffs, Barclays are at least now taking a great deal of notice of his complaint. Barclays told us that they regret any distress caused to Dave Simpson, but said that due to an oversight, the relevant department wasn't made aware of Dave's claim until the sheriffs visited their office. They said they are in the process of arranging for the judgment to be paid in order to resolve the matter. "6:30 a.m. and it's the first job of the day for Sheriffs Kev and Lawrence. They're acting on behalf of an office manager who was sacked with minimal notice from a company called Classical Flooring Limited. She won an employment tribunal and is owed over £10,000. On a previous visit, the sheriffs went to the company showroom and tracked down one of the owners.
Hello, sir.
He informed Lawrence that all the assets had been transferred to another company and so couldn't be removed to clear the debt to his former office manager, and he had documents to prove it.
I'm quite happy with the paperwork that I've seen, that none of the major assets in there, none of the equipment, the tools or anything like that actually belong to the two gentlemen personally. So there's nothing really at that premises we can actually remove.
Lawrence left empty-handed, but still noted the details of vehicles that could potentially be taken at a later date to clear the debt. The office manager, Joan Wales, was awarded £13,500 by an employment tribunal for unfair dismissal, but hasn't received any of it.
They just thought I'd walk away and I wouldn't fight for this. But I do fight, and I am fighting because it's wrong.
Joan was dismissed after over a decade of loyal service.
It's very hard. I didn't think they'd do it to me.
Fortunately for Joan, she has Kev and Lawrence on her side. They're going to the home of one of Classical Flooring's former owners to see if any property can be seized to clear the debt.
We've got a couple of cars to look for, one of which shows up on the HPI register, but it shows up as a personal loan. Now, a personal loan doesn't normally actually have any hold over the vehicle at all. It is just a personal loan, but sometimes the companies put it onto the HPI register just to try and protect it. So we haven't got in touch with the finance company or anything like that. We want to go there and find the car first, or stop it from being driven away. Then we'll try and make contact with the debtor, and if necessary, then we'll contact the finance company to see if they have got any hold over it.
The sheriffs have arrived. It's first thing in the morning to increase the chances of the owner being home. The car in question, an Audi TT, is parked right outside the front door.
Mr. Lidford, he's not here. Right, are you able to get him on the phone at all? I'll show you my identification. We're enforcement officers here to execute a High Court writ. Basically, we're going to take away the Audi.
The person answering the door says the Audi TT is on hire purchase and doesn't belong to Mr. Lidford.
It's not HP, it's a personal loan. Are you Mr. Lidford? Yeah?
Mr. Lidford has suddenly appeared and he's shut the door on the sheriffs.
Take the Audi then.
But before the sheriffs can do that, they need to call the finance company. The Audi cannot be taken if it's on hire purchase and belongs to that company. However, if Mr. Lidford bought it with a personal loan, he owns it and it can be removed.
Hi there.
No, sir.
Mr. Lidford asked the camera operator to leave his drive. He tells the sheriffs that the Audi is definitely on hire purchase.
Right, we did a HPI on it, and it's come back as personal loan, which isn't finance. I'm going to try and contact them now. I think we're probably going to be a bit early for them. But if it turns out to be a personal loan, we will be taking the vehicle.
Mr. Lidford gets into the other car in his drive. He may be making room to move the Audi before the sheriffs can take it. He asks the sheriffs to move their van.
We won't be moving at the moment, no, sir. Lawrence, mind yourself. Lawrence, mind yourself, Lawrence. We're not moving that, no. You won't be moving the van out.
Criminal damage.
You do that and we'll phone the police, you'll get nicked. Go for your life. You'll be obstructing court officers from doing their job, which you can get arrested for.
Right, Mr. Lidford.
Try it. Go for your life. Go for your life. I'm telling you, you'll get arrested for it. You're now hitting my van, so...
Mr. Lidford, we'll seize this vehicle as well.
Mr. Lidford says Lawrence can't. The vehicle he's driving doesn't belong to him.
Right, well, you need to show proof of that, sir. Yes, you do, sir.
It looks like Mr. Lidford is giving up trying to force his way out. He gets out of the car and angrily tells the sheriffs the Audi is definitely on hire purchase and cannot be removed to pay off the debt.
Right, sir, I've said to you, if it turns out that you're correct, because that vehicle is seized...
Mr. Lidford then accuses Lawrence of shouting at him.
He's not shouting at you, he's talking to you. Why are you getting in his face?
I've got a loud voice. Stand back and I'll try and talk more quietly, all right? I'm not deliberately shouting at you, I just have a loud voice. One of my colleagues came here before Christmas and left seizure paperwork on the Audi. Now, when you got that paperwork, you were then obliged to notify, if it was owned by a finance company, you were obliged to notify the finance company that the vehicle had been seized, and they then had to get in touch with us and make a claim to that vehicle and state their case. You didn't do that, therefore we're obliged to remove it.
Mr. Lidford goes back into the house. Having successfully blocked the Audi in, the sheriffs will wait until 9 AM when they can call the finance company to confirm who owns it. But it's a bitterly cold morning.
Have we driven to the North Pole?
Mr. Lidford comes back out and wants to know who the sheriffs are.
We're here to execute a High Court writ. Remember, we came to you at your business.
He says if the sheriff's van isn't legally entitled to be there, he's going to smash it.
He's been a bit more shirty than last time, hasn't he?
Yeah, I knew he would be.
The sheriffs wait in the relative warmth of the van. Half an hour later, Mr. Lidford emerges again.
He's coming out. No, I'll stay here for a second, see what he's got to say.
Mr. Lidford says he's taken legal advice and the sheriffs must move their van off his drive. If they don't, he says he'll call the police.
Right, well, we've stated why we're here. If you want to call the police, that's entirely your prerogative, sir. And we haven't... Right, if you want to call the police, Mr. Lidford, call the police. Excellent.
It suits the sheriffs for the police to come. The law is on their side. They're in the process of enforcing a High Court writ, and they've done nothing wrong. An hour later, there's still no sign of the boys in blue. But it may be the sheriffs who'll need to call the police. Mr. Lidford decides to escalate the situation.
What do we need to do now, block us in?
You can't really open it without blocking the road.
I don't know.
It looks like this could become a war of attrition.
That does make me laugh.
Have you called the police, Mr. Lidford?
This makes you look really stupid, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think so.
What do you think?
Yeah.
It's now 9 AM, so Lawrence calls the finance company and asks them to fax the paperwork relating to the ownership of the Audi. If the car is on finance and they hold the title to it, the sheriffs can't remove it.
Hello there, it's Mr. Griggs, the High Court Enforcement Officer.
Half an hour later, the paperwork is faxed to the High Court Enforcement Office. But it is somewhat inconclusive.
I've got an email of the fax received by our office from the finance company with its covering letter. I've been told to have a look at it myself for my own peace of mind because it doesn't appear to say on it anywhere that they actually hold title to the vehicle. It just says purpose of loan if known. if there are any assets, which doesn't immediately implies that there's no actual hold over the car.
But when it comes to High Court writ enforcement, sometimes it pays to be cautious. Having seen the Audi close up, Lawrence doesn't think it will get more than £2,000 at auction, so it might not be worth an expensive emergency legal battle today to prove ownership. Lawrence decides to leave the ball in the finance company's court. They have 5 days to prove without doubt they own the car.
Hi, Mr. Lidford. Right, I've spoken to my governor, and he said basically because of the value of the car and the legal costs involved, we'll leave it. OK, because it's going to rack up costs for everybody concerned unnecessarily. What I'll do, I'll leave you paperwork, OK? Again, it's paperwork seizing that. I've also, because we've not seen any paperwork, seized that, OK? I'll get in touch with your guy from the finance company myself to tell him what we're doing. I would imagine he'll get in touch with you. He'll have to make his proper third-party claim against the vehicle, OK? And the legal people will battle it out without the necessity to actually go to the court, which it would. Because if it ends up going in front of a master at the court, which it would, then you're looking at more than the value of the car just to have a hearing with the master, and somebody's going to get stuff with that either way, OK? So just to keep the legal costs down, that's what we're going to do. OK, so I'll give your guy a ring in a moment. If you want to let us off your drive, we'll be out your hair.
Lawrence and his colleagues have one of the highest collection rates in the industry. But sometimes they do have to bide their time before they can get the money for their clients.
I'm now going to get onto the finance company and let them know what we're doing and invite them to submit their third-party claim in accordance with RSC Order 17, which should have been done when we last left the paperwork with Mr. Lidford. I've no doubt this time they'll do that. If it turns out it goes our way, then obviously we'll be back and take the car. But it just saves the unnecessary legal expense of actually having to battle it out in a court and storage costs racking up on the vehicle, because nobody wins then, and the legal costs just outweigh what you're going to get for the vehicle.
So Joan Wales may still get her money, but for the time being, she and the sheriffs must remain patient. It's early morning, and Mark and Kev are in the West Midlands. The sheriff's mission? To get another member of the public the money they're owed.
We're off to Solihull now. We're going to see a Mr. Kempf. He owes £1,900. He used to run a post office, which he no longer does. Apparently, we're just going to his private address now, so we'll give him a knock this morning and see how we get on.
At the post office that the debtor, Pradeep Kent, used to run, an elderly customer broke her foot in an accident, leaving her housebound and in plaster for several weeks. When lawyers representing her wrote to Mr. Kent to pursue an injury claim, he wouldn't confirm that he was the post office owner. The injured lady and her lawyers have managed to prove that Mr. Kent was the legal owner, but it's cost them thousands of pounds in court costs to do so. The courts awarded the legal costs against Mr. Kent. Some of this debt is still outstanding, which is where Mark and Kev come in.
Oh, there you go. Hiya. Mr. Kemp.
Mr. Kent isn't in, but his wife is. Our camera operator has a conversation with her and agrees to film from the road. Mrs. Kent says they've already paid off the money to the claimant.
You didn't receive nothing and thought it was the same case. That's what I'm just wondering. You may have thought it was the same
and if you
case that you just paid.
If you thought it was all finished with.
Mark checks back in with the office to find out what's going on.
It's the costs, yeah, it's the costs of the last one. The costs wasn't paid from the last case.
Some of the legal costs are still outstanding, and Mark and Kev aren't going anywhere until these costs have been paid.
Well, we need to collect that amount straight away, otherwise we're going to have to start seizing goods.
Mrs. Kent accepts she must pay the injured lady her money, but she's got to find the cash first.
Well, we have to wait here while you sort that payment out. Unfortunately, we'll have to charge if we have to wait We'll give you an hour, and after an hour we'll start to charge, yeah? No problem. All right.
All this waiting around is bringing out the team spirit in the sheriffs.
Oh, getting cold standing out here.
Come in here, Kev. I'll give you a cuddle, keep you warm. We spoke to the defendant's wife. Apparently he's not here. The lady's now trying to get the money together, supposedly. If she refuses to pay, we're going to start clamping up some of the vehicles that are on the drive here, so hopefully it won't come to that. We'll just have to wait and see what happens from here.
The family should have no problem paying, as a quick phone call back to the office confirms that just one of their cars would more than cover the debt.
That's worth 11 grand.
11?
Yeah.
Is it?
Yeah.
How much?
I don't know what year it is.
While Mark and Kev wait, an uncle arrives to help the family out. But it doesn't speed up the payment. It's now 10:30 a.m. and Mark and Kev have been at the house for over an hour and a half. There's still no sign of any money, so Mark decides to try and move things along. He sets about clamping the cars on the driveway. It's his way of showing that if he doesn't get the money, he'll take the cars instead. But this doesn't go down well with the uncle.
I am. What are you doing? Whoa, 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 whoa.
I just fell over.
You didn't fall over? You didn't fall over?
You do not touch him.
You did not fall over?
Do you understand?
OK, all right, you fell over.
Did the uncle deliberately knee Mark, or did he just fall over? Whatever it was, it doesn't stop Mark clamping the cars, and it has the desired effect. Mrs. Kent agrees to pay up what the injured lady's owed in full, but she's still got to find the money. And as time goes by, Mark's bill isn't staying still.
OK, just to let you know, the bill's going to go up because the amount's not what's on the letter there now. It's gone up by £181.50 plus VAT.
It looks like Mark's tactics have paid off. A family friend arrives with the money.
So I do £2,005 on this? No, sorry, hang on. I'll put 2,005p instead of £2,005.
Frozen brain from outside 3 hours.
OK, that's yours. I'll just do your receipt for the payment.
With the full amount owed now collected for the injured lady, Mark gets a chance to reflect on his run-in with the uncle's knee.
As I was clamping the vehicle, sort of walked past me and I didn't see what he'd done, but he said he tripped over, but I think he might have tried to knee me a little bit, but it was all a bit handbaggy really, nothing major. We got there in the end. It took a couple of hours to get the result we needed, but in the end they paid like they should have done in the first place. Really, they would have saved themselves a bit of money for us waiting around for the waiting time, but they paid the full debt, so it's dealt with.
Sheriff Lawrence is going to see Joan Wales, his client in the unpaid unfair dismissal case against Classical Flooring.
Hello, Joan.
Oh, hello.
Hello, I'm Lawrence. Nice to meet you.
Come on in.
Thank you.
Lawrence is reporting back on his visit to Mr. Lidford's home.
We're not going to get into his house, that is for sure. He was coming out and locking the door behind him.
Oh, yes.
You know.
He won't be happy.
So he's got no assets that we can get our hands on, basically.
Because the ownership documents for the Audi were so inconclusive, Lawrence recommends against taking the risk of removing it.
There's a potentially huge cost implication for yourself if we did go and take it and then they put in a claim for it.
Right, OK.
The finance company turn around and say, yes, we have got a title to it. It then becomes a legal battle, and if you dispute the claim, and it goes all the way to the High Court where you go in front of a master and he makes the decision, just the cost of doing that and the storage, etc. in the meantime will probably outweigh the value of the vehicle.
But Joan was prudent enough to include both the Classical Flooring owners, Mr. Lidford and Mr. Barnard, in the High Court writ she obtained for her money.
If you'd like us to go round to Barnard's and try and catch him, that's what we'll do next.
Yeah.
So how do you feel about that?
It's been very draining.
Yeah.
Personally wise, you know, through all of this, because nobody wants to be on the receiving end of this, and nobody wants to be sat here where we are now.
You know, you shouldn't have to do battle to get what's yours at the end of the day. You shouldn't, you know.
I shouldn't have to worry about having to pay for anything that those people owe me, because a judge has sat there and said, Joan, you are awarded £13,500, and this is all wrong.
Yeah.
Totally wrong.
No, you won't get any disagreement from me there.
Joan wants the sheriffs to keep up the battle on her behalf, for as long as it takes.
I'll never let them get away with it, never. I'll fight to the bitter end. So, yeah, I will.
And Lawrence will continue his fight to get money for all his clients who are owed cash.
The majority of people pay their way through life, don't get into debt, don't refuse to pay for things. It's the minority that won't pays. There's systems in place to help the calm pays, but the won't pays shouldn't be allowed to get away with it, and we're redressing the balance by going after them.
Since Mark and Kev visited former post office owner Pradeep Kent's house, the injured customer is delighted to have received her money back in full and is very glad she turned to the sheriffs. A month after Lawrence and Kev went to Joan Wales's former boss's home, Joan's considering forcing both of her former employers into bankruptcy to try to get the money she's owed. The sheriffs will soon be carrying out another early morning seizure. Hopefully next time things will prove more clear-cut. And in Essex, kidney transplant patient Robert Baker is delighted he finally got his £10,000 Employment Tribunal Award, thanks to the sheriffs.
Just ecstatic, to be honest. I sort of got the money at last. Knowing that it's all done and dusted and I can get on with my life, it's just a huge relief.
Next time, plumber Ray Millett paid for and fitted a full central heating system for a building company, but he didn't get paid a penny.
To treat people in this way, it's pretty despicable, really.
Can the sheriffs get Ray his money back?
We need to collect the payment, which is £11,100 now.
Sheriff Pete Spencer revisits a road services company that owes a former employee thousands.
Well, listen, I'm a director of the company. I'm now asking you to leave the premises.
From the police.
I will do.
Okay.
And when Jan Smith sold valuable items through a local auctioneers, she expected a hefty cheque. Instead, she got an antiques no-show.
I haven't had any money whatsoever. It's just outrageous. It is outrageous.
The sheriffs go in search of the cash she's owed.
Fresh-faced cadets with a shock coming tonight on BBC Two. Their new life as British Army officers begins at Sandhurst Royal Military Academy at 7. But next this afternoon, this week's shocker in EastEnders.